There are people you hear about only in stories, and most of the time they come up during family meetings, or when the weirdest topics come up. This is one of those moments. My mother had a few friends over recently, back from her university days, and it seems that up comes the topic again of this man. This man that she and her friends worked with during her university days. I will not mention his name, and not too many details, simply because I've never met the man, but I definitely find his story to be one to be heard. We'll make his name Hans, because Hans is nice and German, and the man was German. Now, Hans was, from what I've heard, to be quite the modest man. He rarely bragged about his abilities, and he seemingly had a general apathy towards ambition. He wasn't too interested in becoming powerful or rich or any of the sort. Instead, he had the general interest of science at heart, as many people studying physics would. He, however, had a special gift. He had what some people may call a photographic memory, and as a result, he seemingly never had an issue with any sort of test. Quoting my mother's friend, he once wrote down in an exam for the question, "Please refer to page 274, line 6, word 7 for the answer regarding the question you have asked, and if that is not enough, please move down 4 more lines to get the rest." It was accepted because he wrote the actual answer underneath. It was more of a joke. So, that was the biggest anticlimax I have ever heard, and quite disappointed at that. But alas, what can I do? What shall I do? Moving on, he went through university flying colors, no issues whatsoever. After all, he saw the page anytime he had to answer a question. Surprisingly, what he always had to struggle with was things that did not end up being his gift. That would be the practical experimentations, where oftentimes the only way you could do them is either to invent a new method or to work on an old, but only from instructions. After all, now there being nothing to look at and remember, there was an issue. But my mother's friend, he knew his stuff, and they managed to get through that quite easily. It's funny enough, Hans actually answered all the questions beforehand, and then the experiments were only there to make the result more reasonable. Obviously, he's a terrible scientist, because not supposed to do that. Funny enough, they actually found a discrepancy that the last 10 years had not seen, simply because they, like many others before them, had just copied the group before and the year before. Because after all, the answers were there, you just had to do the experiment over. This was back a long time ago. Again, years and names will not be mentioned. Now, he passed. He got his, I think it was a doctorate in physics, and he went to get said doctorate. After all, he got his first degree, and then he moved to the United States. Once in the United States, I think it was Harvard that he went to, a few funny things happened. First things first, after applying to the university, and after all, he was very, very young when he did so. While other people may be in their 23, 24, he was in his young 20s and had no issue with that at all. However, who made sure they did have an issue was the gambling companies. Now, I'm sure some of you may know about the idea of card counting, where you list the cards in your mind and remember which ones have gone out and so forth, and other such tricks that very heavily require memory. Now, he had created a bit of a reputation now in the international community. After all, as you have a photographic memory, one would do so. But even I could not believe that this happened. What he had, 2 days after he arrived in the United States, he got a message. or in this case a mail, since messaging wasn't quite as widespread back in the day. And essentially it read, "We, the gambling companies of the United States, wish to give you a deal. In concurrence, if you decide to agree to this, we will give you a very, very generous salary per year for the rest of your life. In return, you never set foot in any of our gambling organizations, ever." In other words, he would be banned from casinos, permanently, if you were to accept this deal. And, as he was the man he was, he had no issue with it, so he signed away, and never had to work a job. Lucky him. I was not so lucky. And I'm sure many of us weren't. However, it was always funny to talk about, since he made more money than he probably would have gotten in the gambling tables. Simply because they would have thrown him out eventually, because that's what American companies do. All that right not to serve you. However, let's move on. So now that he's in Harvard, he's doing his, I think this was now his doctorate. He finished that, he started teaching. And as a professor at a very young age, he eventually also went into research and did that for a very long time, still getting the money from the casinos, because I mean, who wants someone like him in their establishment? That would be both honorable and most likely causing you to go bankrupt. Because hey, that's how things work nowadays. No, but he's finished. He's teaching, but now he also does research, and after doing research for a good 10 to 15 years, he eventually dropped out. Reason being that the military actually wanted to use his general inventions, things I'm not allowed to talk about, although I have knowledge of, because, you know, military and stuff. Also why I'm not mentioning any names. I should probably check myself a bit more. That reminds me of a few videos coming up. Oh dear, indeed. No. So, Hans now decides, alright, research is not for me, the military is using them. I'm kind of too good a guy to give the military more ways to kill people. They've have enough, I'm sure they can deal with it. So he ends up going back to Germany, where he is originally from. And to this day, he is actually still teaching. He went from the highest position to almost the lowest, from the head of a department down to nothing but a lowly professor. But he was happy. He never really felt like he missed much. He made his money, he married, had a good life, and back he is in his homeland. And I have to say, he is one to live by. Granted, we can't all get the wonderful treatment he got from those wonderful gambling companies, because everyone knows the gambling companies are what really matters here. But from a life that was pretty much given, he went out quite well. Now, there's probably a reason why I made this video. It's only, what, 10 minutes long gonna be, I think, judging from how much I ramble. But the reason why I made this video is not because it's to show off that I have great connections and could most likely create a giant array of wonderful spiderwebs of intricacy and spying and all that stuff. No, that's definitely not the right thing to say. Let's not, alright, forget about that earlier part, please, thank you. No, why I'm doing this is because it's interesting to note, even people that have everything and could accrue just huge amounts of power, fame, wealth, they decide not to. Because maybe it's because they're so smart, maybe it's because they can think ahead, but they can see that it's not that important. And they'll be judged on who they are and how they act, and that's all that really matters. Because you act for yourself, and when you can for others, and make sure that nothing goes wrong in both their lives and yours. So let's live by those words and enjoy life for what it is. Absolutely boring. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe. New videos will be up every Friday. Topics will vary, so make sure you like what you like to get more of just that. And also have no qualms about putting down comments as to topics you'd like covered. I'm always looking for new suggestions, and I hope to see you in the next video. To make sure you don't miss it, please do subscribe.